right now. We're joined by Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 Sports Talk Network. Download the app and subscribe to the Mannix podcast. Chris, how are you, my friend? A interesting night here in the Philadelphia region. Sixers-Knicks was like the highlight of the NBA schedule last night. Two of the doldrums in the league right now.
Yeah, and two teams that are headed in markedly different directions. Look, I wouldn't call a win like that a springboard for anything else for the Sixers, because they certainly have a long way to go. But it absolutely is the type of win that can really do a lot for young players. The toughest thing for young players to do in the NBA is learn to win late in games. You're seeing Minnesota go through it right now. You once saw Oklahoma City do it. Philadelphia's got at least this year, possibly next, to have to deal with those growing pains. But wins like that, they can really do a lot for the confidence of young players.
Yeah, they've won 4 of 5, and after each game, you start to hear guys like Joel Embiid say, and T.J. McConnell said it last night, there's no way we won a game like that earlier in the season. Like, they feel that they're learning how to win games like this. Is it encouraging to hear that from the players, that that they admit it? Hey, we were losing these games. We didn't know what the heck we were doing, but now we are figuring some things out, and you're starting to see that in the win column.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'd be a little wary of this being any kind of sign of things to come, because I do think they're going to have a lot more losses at the end of games that they just can't finish. And look, this is still a team that's yet to incorporate Ben Simmons, that presumably will have 1 or 2 more top young players on the roster next year, and that's something that is also going to take time to come together. But minor victories, like the little victories they can get, like the one they had last night, that certainly is a positive for this team's growth.
Yeah, well, let me get your opinion on this real quick about where do you think this team would be, or how they would look if Ben Simmons were healthy and playing?
I think they'll be more interesting and more diverse offensively. I mean, Brett Brown's been clear he wants to play Ben Simmons as a point guard when he comes back. But I'd love to see what he looks like after watching him in Summer League. He really showed great court vision. I mean, he had a special look to him when I saw him play out in Las Vegas, and I'd like to see how that translates to the NBA level. But, he's going to have some rough nights shooting the basketball when he comes back. I mean, he wasn't a very good shooter at LSU. He wasn't a very good shooter at Summer League. I think he'll have a lot of problems in his first year in the NBA, but it's just another step. I know that process word is famous in Philadelphia, but it's another step in the process of building this team into an eventual winner.
So what's the process now for New York? You had the Rose stuff. What's his future? Where does that team look like they're going? I mean, there was a team that appeared to try to take a shot this offseason. They went out and got Rose and Noah to put him around Anthony. They had Porzingis. Where are they headed?
Yeah, they're in a bad way right now. There's no question. It's not just the Rose situation, but prior to that, they were in the massive losing streak, doldrums. I mean, they can't defend anybody right now. They're one of the worst defensive team in the NBA, and Phil Jackson has a lot to answer for at this moment. As far as where Rose goes from here, look, the Knicks, why they brushed this under the rug, only fined him, didn't suspend him, and it basically said, nothing to see here, is because they know they have no chance of getting to the playoffs unless Derrick Rose is reintegrated to this team quickly and develops into a player comfortable in this system. Now, I'm not convinced the story's over. I think Derrick Rose, there's more to it than just him wanting to go home and see family members. I've been told he's been unhappy with his role with the team. We all saw the benching in the fourth quarter against Milwaukee. That was an issue for him. So I think this could, this friction could rear its head again with the Knicks. How they deal with it, I don't know. I mean, this is a bad situation out in New York, and it could end with some firings at the end of the year.
Yeah, and then the timing of the report that came out that he wanted a max deal possibly at the end of this year. I mean, is he a max player these days?
No shot that Derrick Rose is a max player. I mean, look, he might get paid by somebody, but if you look at who's got free agent money this summer, it's the bad teams. It's Philadelphia. It's New York. It's Sacramento. It's Brooklyn. Does Derrick Rose want to go to one of those teams for a couple of extra bucks and make a little cash and play there long term? I don't know, but I can tell you this: contending teams, the good ones that might need a point guard, they're going to take a long look at Derrick Rose and decide if he's worth it after what he pulled this season.
Chris Mannix with us, NBC Sports Radio, of course, the Vertical as well. right now. I love watching these 10:30 East Coast games. I see Portland so much, and you scratch your head and wonder, what's this team missing? They look great last night. Love McCollum, Lillard. They have a lot of athletic wings. What is that team missing? I mean, I looked at their standings the other night, and I'm like, this is the 8th seed. They're under 500. What is a team like that missing?
Well, I mean, I think what they're missing is more help in that front court. And I talked to C.J. McCollum about this the other day. He was on my podcast, and we were discussing just the impact of not having Al-Farouq Aminu early in the season and really having to juggle big men. Now that Aminu's back, they're starting to get their rotation set. And Aminu, not a very well-known player, but he is the defensive stopper on that team. He's the guy you're going to see on the LeBrons and the Kevin Durants and all the great wing players in the NBA. Having him back has really proven vital. Now the next step is integrating Evan Turner into the mix. I mean, Turner has not been anywhere close to the impact player he was with Boston last year. If they can get him more comfortable, they can still make a run here. Right now they're sitting in the 8th spot in the Western Conference because the back end of the Western Conference is so bad. There is enough time, if they can get their defense right, to make a run and get back into that 4-5 mix.
They got a couple of former Sixers. You mentioned Turner. Harkless, he's a nice athletic player. Amin's been great the last couple of weeks. He has been really good, adding a lot to that team. They're fun to watch. Right now, Chris, the stories have been Westbrook and Harden. If you were voting MVP today, who gets your vote?
I'd probably vote for James Harden just because the numbers team-wise are better. I know he's got a little bit more help than Russell Westbrook has, but Harden, I watched that game against Oklahoma City, and the last sequence, kind of indicated who James Harden was and why I think he's the MVP. He didn't hesitate for a second to make that pass into the paint with 1-2 seconds left to hit Nene. I mean, he's not hitting an MVP there. He's hitting Nene, who, in the last couple of years has really been a shell of his former self. But his unselfishness was on display in that game. And the way that Mike D'Antoni's harnessed him and turned him into just a much improved player this year, I would lean towards James Harden.
In your opinion, any fine suspensions going to come down from Boston, Washington last night?
Maybe. I think both John Wall and Jay Crowder will get fined for that altercation. I'm curious if the NBA looks at what John Wall did with that light slap to the face as being kind of punch-worthy. You and I might not think so, but the NBA is very tight on what players can and can't do. And when you throw your hand like that in a swinging, violent motion, however lightly violent it was, for lack of a better phrase, the NBA might look at it. So I wouldn't be shocked if John Wall got one game and both those players got fined.
Chris Mannix, last one for you, Chris. When the season started, I think most casual fans, people who watch the NBA, would say about 3 teams, Cleveland, Golden State, San Antonio. Has that field expanded as title contenders?
Not really. In fact, I still think the field is 2. It's Cleveland, it's Golden State. Nobody's shown me that either one of those teams can be beaten 4 times in 7 nights. Toronto had a shot at them last month. Cleveland was on a 3-game losing streak. The Cavaliers went to Toronto and won. Now the Raptors might be able to make some kind of move, go get a Paul Millsap out of Atlanta, but I don't. Barring that, I'm not sure they can compete with them. Same thing with Golden State. I mean, San Antonio's good, the Clippers are good, but you got to win 4 times, and you're really going to have to convince me that somebody out there outside of Cleveland can beat the Golden State Warriors 4 times.
Maybe if Cleveland played at Portland, they would have some trouble. That was a bad game last night for the Cavs. Real quick, you mentioned Millsap. They appear to take him off the block, but bringing it back here locally, is there any murmurs, buzz, anything? I mean, Okafor hasn't played in 3 games now. Are they just resigned to sitting him for a while? I mean, that's bizarre, right?
Well, there's no real rhyme or reason, it seems like, for how Philadelphia is playing its bigs. I mean, Nerlens Noel was out of the rotation. Now Okafor's out of the rotation. I had thought coming into January that either Noel or Millsap would get a big push in the lineup just to increase their trade value. You can't trade guys who are sitting on the bench, at least not if you hope to get anywhere close to equal value in return. So I expected one of those 2. I thought it would be Okafor because Okafor is the kind of guy that absolutely cannot play alongside Joel Embiid, whereas Noel might be able to if you try a few things out. And that hasn't really played out. So I really struggle to understand the rotations there if the ultimate goal it's to trade one of those big men.
Yeah, we're all kind of keeping an eye on that. He hasn't played. Noel has kind of done a good job as a backup center, but it looks like he still wants a max deal. So that'll be interesting to see if the Sixers hold him, just let him walk. Chris Mannix says more on the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, the 24-hour Sports Talk Network. Download the app, subscribe to the Mannix Podcast. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, pal.
You got it anytime.